We've been talking all week about identifying what isn't working. And today we're going to talk about what its root is. And if you think about it, you have a tree. And if you cut the leaves off, the leaves are dying on the tree, you cut the leaves off and you keep cutting leaves off, and some leaves look alive and some look dead. And you keep doing that for years. And you don't really know what's causing that. Or you can look at the root system, try to figure out the soil and all that. We're going to talk about how that works in business and why it's so important to business and leadership on edition 843 of today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Apologies, Tom. I said edition. I went back to my newspaper roots, apparently, and used edition, not episode. I don't even know where that came from. That's crazy.
Well, didn't you just say where it came from?
I'm sorry, what?
Didn't you just say where it came from?
I guess. I just don't know. You know, it's 800 episodes. Why would that have just cropped up today? Don't have an answer for you. I just don't.
Who knows? Hard to tell.
Who knows? That's it.
Excellent. All right. Good morning and welcome, everyone, to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast, where each week we have a conversation around a topic. And then each weekday, we dive a little deeper into that topic. As Bob mentioned this week, we're talking about what isn't working, or identifying what isn't working. And trying to figure out today, we're going to do is what's its root. Because often that times what we're seeing and thinking isn't working isn't necessarily the cause of what it is. So as we go through that conversation, please feel free to share your thoughts and ideas, because we know that'll add value to our show and will impact what we're saying. Likely it changes the direction of the show oftentimes. So please feel free to share your value. As we conclude that conversation, Bob and I will each offer our one thing, our today's antidote. That thing that we hope will help you figure out how to take your next step. When you might be stuck, frustrated, uncertain, can't figure out what isn't working and why, we can help you figure out how to take that next step. And of course, if you have a one thing, please feel free to share it as well. Because people might be hearing, or so many people might be telling people things, and they just aren't hearing it until you say it and they actually hear it the way that you share it with them. So please feel free to also share your one thing. Before we dive into that conversation.
I have one thing first, Tom. I'm sorry. May I, please?
Sure.
We all have at least one thing that isn't working in our business or in our leadership. I think there's a perception that we're supposed to have it all perfectly figured out, and there isn't. That it's an anomaly when we have something not working. I think what I've come to realize is about 99.9% of the time, something isn't working. When I know when something isn't working is even a smaller subset of that number. So it's fairly common to have something not working. We've talked about it, I think this week, I was listening to one of our broadcasts yesterday, and it felt like, if something's not working, well, let's face facts, folks. You know, and I know something's probably not working the way you would like it to in what you're doing.
Okay, maybe.
Is everything working perfectly in your business today?
Well, I don't think anything's ever perfect.
Okay, so that means something could be improved. Something isn't working optimally, right?
Be maybe done differently. I think it's hard to determine. I think it's hard to determine. I think that's one of the challenges of all of this is, and I think that's why we've been talking about this week is trying to identify what it might be. I guess maybe the conversation could also be is, how do you know if it's not working? Maybe we talked about that. I think we talked about that on Monday.
We did.
So you might want to go back and listen to that episode, 800 and probably 39, maybe 840.
No, 839. You're right.
Because I think that's part of the challenge, right? Is how many times do we kid ourselves that things are working, or we judge ourselves and say they aren't? I think that's part of the challenge of all of this is how do you define working? I think everybody's got a little different definition of what working means. So I think that's what we're trying to explore. So I would imagine that if you really took a look at things, you would say some things aren't working the way you might like them to.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to say if that means they're working or not.
Okay.
Is that fair?
That's fair. I'll give you that. Sure.
But I mean, and I would go back to, I think if you go with the statement that everything isn't perfect, I would say absolutely. It's all a work in progress.
And subject to change at
Correct.
any time.
Certainly.
Okay.
Certainly.
So let's get to celebrations, Tom. You know why we do this, don't you? We celebrate each day to just put ourselves in that right frame of mind to move forward, rather than saying, oh, yesterday was such a hard day, or I didn't get this done, or I didn't do that, or this didn't work the way I thought it would. We celebrate taking the steps, doing the things that we do. So my celebration today, if I may go first, is you've said it several times in the last couple months, and I know it, but I don't always get to exercise it. And that is the flexibility that we have, because we have businesses that give us that flexibility. And yesterday I was able to be flexible enough to have the afternoon to go enjoy a beautiful afternoon of weather and not worry about my work for the afternoon. Now, I was up super early yesterday to make that happen, and I did a little extra work this morning to make that work out. But being able to shift my time to do things enabled me to do something yesterday afternoon that I was not expecting to get to do. And with the shift of one thing, I was able to make it happen.
Nice. Good celebration.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
I said a good celebration.
Yes. And the weather was perfect.
It was nice out yesterday. There's no doubt about
it. It really was. And it's cool today here in Baltimore.
Yeah, I haven't been outside, although it feels...
It's brisk. It's getting up to like 60. And yesterday was around 80.
It's funny how we define brisk.
Yeah. Well, you're from New York, so I'm sorry. To you, this is summer.
Well, is brisk, whatever it is now, closing in on 60, 50s? Or do you say it's brisk when it's 30 and it...
No, when it's 30, it's freezing and I'm inside.
Unless it has been 10 for the last week, then it might feel like it's brisk. It's not cold, it's just brisk.
True.
So
what's your celebration today?
My celebration is that once again, today I get to do a presentation or a facilitation of a meeting with an organization's board, trying to work out some of the challenges that they're facing.
Okay.
It's becoming a very popular thing that seems to be desperately needed. And I think it goes back to and I think it's actually interesting with the topic that we have today is I think that this particular board I'm working with realizes it's not working. And I'm not sure. I think
it being that their board is not working, not the
correct.
Topic or your facilitation.
Correct.
Okay.
The board isn't working
okay.
The way it could or should, or it's not perfect. All those things that we know it's probably not going to be. And I'm not sure that they are clear on based on what they've shared with me, truly what its root is. I think they are looking at some of the things that are sort of above the surface that are challenges and not truly seeing, maybe some of them are, where the root of the problem are. And I think we're going to try to get to that today. So looking forward to doing that presentation tonight.
Sounds like it ties right into our topic today, too.
Did I just say that?
You did.
Okay. So if it ties in, do you want to talk about that?
I do. And as you were saying that, it occurred to me that one of the reasons why we might not look at the roots of something is that it's painful. In the opening, I talked about the tree, and imagine you have that tree in your backyard and you were a little kid and you lived in the house that your parents bought, and there was the tree that you climbed, and you get older and your parents are getting older and the tree's still there and the tree's grown up. It's over top of the house. It provides shade, and the leaves falling. You rake the leaves every year, and you help your parents rake the leaves. And suddenly it gets sick. And you don't want to deal with the fact that this tree could fall on the house and cause serious damage. You just don't want to. I know people in that situation are like, I know this tree is a risk, because someone will say, they'll come over and be like, hey, have you looked at that tree? It looks like it's dying. Yeah, I know. We know we're just crossing our fingers. And I think it's because we have such an emotional response to things. And I think in an office, I've worked in offices where there was an employee that was a great employee for a number of years, and then they changed, the organization changed, there were shifts, and that employee was no longer as valuable because whatever, that, the technology had shifted, the responsibilities had shifted, the customer base had shifted. And it's hard to deal with that, because that's do you deal with the situation now, or do you deal with the past? And if you're dealing with the past, well, they were always there for us 20 years ago. They were always there. They did great stuff. But here is 20 years later, and they don't want to deal with it. I think you see that often. I also think we as owners have areas that may not be working in an organization. Even if it's an organization of one, like my company, there are things I don't do well. There are things that if you identified the root cause for a couple of things in my company, I'd be like, right here, it's him. He either doesn't do that well, or he doesn't like doing that. And so because of that, I slow down the growth of my company at times. And I know the root cause, it's me. I know the root cause is I have to figure it out to move to the next level with what I'm trying to do. But that doesn't mean I want to take it on. And so I think in some ways, when we talk about what's its root, I think often we know what the root is. We just don't want to deal with it because it comes with a lot of emotion. I've talked to plenty of owners where it's like, well, what's your biggest roadblock right now? And they'll be like, well, I've got this one employee who's responsible for this. I worked with one company where they said the person who had all the relationships with the customers had some issues, and they were just erratic in their response to customers. One day they were the nice as could be. The next day they were really having challenges with those relationships. And I said to the owner, well, have you stepped in? No, I can't. They have the relationships. And so we had to work through ways for that owner to take over some of those relationships and to say to the employee, it can't work this way. And it was, what if the employee quits? What if they get upset and call all our customers and complain? And getting over that emotional hurdle. And in the end, it worked itself out. But often we like I said earlier in the week, we tend to see the worst case scenario. What if I talk to that employee about how they're handling the customers? And what if they get really upset? What if they quit? What if they call the customers and say how bad a company we are? What if they go to our competitor? All three of those are worst case scenarios. And I know I am prone to thinking through worst case scenarios when I start to think of the roots of problems. In my business, well, maybe what if I shouldn't have been a business owner in the first place? What was I thinking? I mean, that was a silly idea. Geez, if I can't do a perfect sales call every day, why am I in business? That makes no sense to me. What was I thinking? Why didn't I stop myself? I need to give this up right now. I've had that thought process go through my head a number of times. So rather than get at the root, like what's going on here, Bob, it's a whole lot easier to just sort of wait it out, straighten the paper clips on my desk yet again, check my email, check my social media, and then hopefully that little storm goes away and I don't deal with the root cause. Until one day it just becomes so much of a hindrance to me, or the right person says to me, hey, this is the 18th time you've talked about this. What's going on here? You've done it with me a couple of times. You did it with something last week with me. Like, hey, how many times are you going to do this? Where do you fit in the equation? I think that's a hard discussion to have. And I think so often we're trying to have that discussion with ourselves. And I've learned I can't have that discussion with me. Because when it gets to the root cause problem, if the root cause is Bob, I'm the last person who can be objective and say, hey, Bob, your company needs you to do this a different way to move forward?
Yes, and I think what you were talking about is got to a lot of what I was thinking is I think it is hard, where you started. I think it's hard because of what I saw in you over the last minute and a half was the emotion.
I was going to say, I could see it bubbling up too. It's like I was getting
And
more and more upset. Just I heard the tone of my voice, and it
I
was
think,
hard to have that discussion, even conceptually.
well, I think because the emotion makes it difficult to consider. Let's go back to your tree example.
Hmm.
The reason you were all nervous about it was because of the emotion and the history that you had with that tree. And so you think and your initial response was keep cutting off the dead leaves. And I think that's the challenge is we're so emotional about it. We think that the challenge is, well, if I cut off these dead leaves, it won't kill the other ones. And ultimately it's something that the real root of the problem likely with that tree is down in the ground. Those things that we can't see because we are caught up in the emotion and can only see what's right in front of our face, like the leaves. So we deal with
Or
that.
we see the tree that we saw when we were 10 years old that we climbed.
Yes. And I think,
We have that historical picture of the most beautiful version of that tree. When I think of the trees in my life, I don't think of them when all the leaves are down and it's January and you can see right through it. I always think of when it's big and bushy and it's got the red leaves or the apples on it and those things. And I think we tend to do that with our business. When we try to have that root discussion with ourselves, it's like, well, yeah, but I'm so good at this, this, and this.
yes. And I think when I think about it, it's those things that underlying things that you don't even consider. So I'll go to my board example. They think it's personalities in the room or egos in the room or things that are going on. And yeah, that might be the result of it, some things. The real root of their problem, based on what I know so far, is the underlying foundation that organization, the board, is operating under. And that is not as solid as it could be. Now, it might be solid and they are just avoiding it. Or, which tends to be the case, it's not as solid as it needs to be for them to be where they are. And that there are policies and procedures that aren't in place that would help avoid a lot of this. Their bylaws aren't as effective as they could be or aren't as detailed as they might need to be, or they're too detailed, which hinders them. And or they forget their mission. They forget what the mission of the organization is, and they get caught up in all of this stuff that's out here and personal and emotional, and they can see and feel like the problem is the people, when likely the problem is the underlying foundation that it is on, and that is what causes them. And I don't think we can be as the people in the middle of it can truly go there and consider that, because we're wrapped up in the emotion of what's going on. And so all I see is that Susie and Bill are having an argument over differences in perspective, differences in how we think we should operate, and are forgetting the underlying tone of, well, what's ultimately best for the organization, and what are the guidelines by which the organization has been set up, and are we truly following that, or have we skewed from that? It might be with the tree. Who knows? It's not getting the sunlight it used to get. And so that's part of the challenge, because the leaves have grown and it's more beautiful and whatever. Well, the roots aren't getting what it needs. Or you planted another tree that is now taking some of the water supply that tree was having. And again, I think that those are the things that are so difficult for us because we're in the middle of it and we're caught in the emotion. You could have a tree expert walk in there and say, hey, I know what your issue is. You planted a garden 10 feet away. And that garden saps up all of the nutrients and energies and whatever, and the tree is left with nothing. And you would have never come to that conclusion, because you would have been like, well, the tree is still flourishing. Like, I got this great garden and all is happy and well until it isn't. And I think that so often is the biggest challenge, is that we can't step back enough and get rid of the emotion to see what the underlying issues are. Even if we think we do. I think we think that it's not working because of this. If you had somebody else come in and look at it, they'd be like, again, go to the person who you hired. And I think that's why this board person is bringing someone else from the outside in, is to say, yeah, that's an issue. It's not the root of the problem. The root of the problem is this, and that you have ignored this foundation that had been set up. And for some reason, slowly but surely, you moved away from it. And now you're seeing the effects of that action that you stopped taking long ago.
And I think it goes even deeper, excuse the pun, finding what the root cause is one thing, but then being willing to deal with it. Taking on that challenge is a whole nother thing.
Well, sure, but I think most
the problem with the tree is that it's not getting enough water, and you're going to have to make a choice: garden or tree, garden or tree. Well, I'm tied to that tree. But I really love my garden. The garden provides us the vegetables that we eat all summer. I really find that valuable versus the tree. And I think with our businesses and as leaders, we don't want to tackle that hard decision: garden versus tree.
Because
stay the same. Nat, I know what the problem is. Stay the same because it's easier to be static than to take on the challenge.
Well, and I think what you just said there, I think, is one of the things that really gets people stuck, is they think the only solution is tree or garden. Right?
Sure.
Well, have you ever considered that you got a hose outside that you could water the garden and the tree and still have both? And I think those are the things, is we only can see what we see. And typically that is so blurred by emotion, or just that it's us, that we can't.
Or outside viewpoints, right? Everyone says, oh, it's got to be it's because it's not getting enough sun. It's because there's more pavement in the neighborhood. It's, if you ask people, they'll give you their opinion, and they may not be looking at all the factors.
Certainly.
And so I think I've gotten that where, 10 people tell me what I should do without even telling me what the root cause is. They just, hey, cut the tree down. Get rid of the tree. That's the solution. Well, I'm sorry, I need to understand. No, just cut the tree down. And I think then you're not able to deal with the emotion. And that's even more overwhelming sometimes. Because you're saying, I really value the tree. I really like the tree. Everyone's telling me I should cut it down. Now you've created yet another friction point where it's like everyone's saying do this, and you don't want to do that. And I don't think it's always because you don't want to do it as much as you haven't had time or space to deal with the emotions around that. None of your friends that said to you, cut the tree down, go, hey, by the way, Bob, what's the deal with the tree? Why don't you want to cut the tree? Well, I remember this tree when I was a little boy, and I climbed it, and it was really something special. I've got pictures every year on my birthday with it. And if it wasn't here, it would be a loss to me. Oh, I didn't realize the tree was so important to you. That changes our whole discussion. Because if we don't process the emotions around it, I think that becomes that creates another area to get stuck. Now we've taken the action. I cut the tree down, and now I'm like, I really miss that tree. Every time I look at that spot on my property, I miss that tree. And so I get stuck around that. I can't enjoy my yard anymore. No more cookouts. Memorial Day is coming. Nope, not going to be in my yard. And I may not even know why I don't want to be in my yard. It's just, oh, you've always had a Memorial Day party, Bob. Why aren't you having one this year? I'm just really busy. And I think that analogy, you can apply it to your business. You can apply it to networking. People who go out to networking and don't see the results that they're looking for. You can apply it to leaders who say, I have a weekly meeting every week and I don't feel like it's as effective as it could be. I write memos to my employees and they don't seem to get the response that they're supposed to get. I heard someone a couple months ago say I gave my employees bonuses. Just out of the blue, gave them bonuses. We were having a great quarter. I gave them bonuses and not one person thanked me. And their comment to me was, did I give them enough of a bonus? And I'm like, well, I think it might be something different. And it turned out, I think from what he told me, he just handed people checks. Didn't explain our hard work as a team led to this.
Right.
So he took the leaves down and kept doing it. I see Ed's got a comment. As a business owner, you are the roots to the branches of the tree. As the roots, you need to dig around the soil and nourish the branches. It is also necessary to prune the branches for them to produce fruit. So as the root of your business, the nourishment is your clients. So never let a branch have total control of your nourishment. Always be in direct contact with the soil and nutrients. Follow up on everything the branches are doing. Plant a better relationship with your nutrients and it cuts off there. Ed likes my metaphor analogy this morning.
Well, that was one of my favorite episodes, favorite weeks. Long ago. This might have been in our first year. Was about your business tree.
Yes.
I thought the analogy was very appropriate and helped really try to understand what was going on with his intent.
I see a comment from Kelly. Good morning. What was his intention to thank his employees for him to be appreciated for his generosity? And Kelly, that is one of the issues that we were talking through. What was your ultimate goal? And I think on the surface it was, I want to thank my employees for really doing a great job over the quarter. But I think at the end of the day, if you ask me, looking at it from the outside, it was, I want to be appreciated by my employees.
I want words of affirmation.
Hey, don't you be dissing those people that want words of affirmation. You know what you're going to do if you say that? You're going to get Ed to say I'm exactly right. I can live with that. Go ahead. You brought it on yourself. Love me some words of affirmation.
Yeah, it's an expectation that we often don't get. It's one of those things of the more you know, or you think you know, of what the issue is or what the solution is, the more you start looking for it. And then when you don't get it, because you're not getting the results you expected, you don't feel the way that you thought you should, could, would. Here you go. See what it has to say.
Sorry, hit the wrong button. With a gratuitous time like playing golf, dinner, or fishing. Okay, I gotta go back. With a gratuitous time, this is Ed continuing his comments. With a gratuitous time like playing golf, dinner, or fishing, to spend quality time in a conversation about how your branches are interacting. And I want to say, Ed, thank you so much for writing a long comment. That if you were on your phone, you really kudos to you. Your commitment to this program is huge. Not lost on me for a second. But it's interesting when we talk about those words of affirmation. There's a root reason why I like those. And it's only been the last couple months I've figured out why that's so important to me. Now I know the cause, and now I need to figure out how I manage that information. It's like the tree.
Or that expectation.
Right. So just knowing what's its root isn't enough. That's like the doctor saying, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Graham, it looks like your heart's got some issues. And me saying, oh, thank you very much. Have a great day. And moving on. And then wondering why I have a heart attack or why I can't go out and run anymore. And I think we tend to do that, except in a real severe situation. The other thing I think I see often is the doctor tells us we have heart issues. We walk away and go, oh, it's not that big a deal. And then a year later, something bigger comes along. And it's like, oh, it's weird. The doctor told me this a year ago and I didn't deal with it. Ed adds, branches eat from the root. Wow. That takes this analogy all to a new level.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's, again, you could take that analogy to a very deep level. And I think the curious thing is, do we ever truly know what the root is? throw that into your idea of words of affirmation, and you're positive that you know what the root of that is, and maybe there's something even more deeper than what you might think. I just think that's the
Are
challenge.
you just trying to ruin my day today, Tom? Here I thought I had some great discovery in the last couple months, and you basically said, no, that's not deep enough.
I said maybe it's not. I didn't say it isn't.
I
I think
know,
that's the
that's
challenge,
what I
though, right? Is that if you don't keep digging, you might stop short and not truly get to the root. And I think that's what so often is we think we found the root. Yeah, that's just the big roots, not the tree, not the little ones that keep going even further that you would think it wouldn't have that much of an impact, and they actually do. I think that's, again, going back to where we think we've solved it is when we stop looking further. And I think that's when we may actually be missing out what might be in even additional things that are part of it, right? How many times have you done something and you're like, this isn't working? You make a tweak because you dive into it and you make a tweak and you're like, oh, now it's working. Everybody seems to be paying attention until they're not. And then you miss the signs when they start to not pay attention because you think that it's working. And I think that's why this, and probably is my one thing, is that there may not be a root cause. There may be a lot of root causes. And if we are not constantly aware of them or trying to identify them or trying to look deeper into what we're doing, we may not find them. Or we may think that we have found them, which could be, I think there's the two extremes, right? If you don't think you found it and you just spend all your time keep looking, that's not helpful. You're going to be stuck. If you think you found it and you stop looking, at some point you're going to get stuck too, because the what might be deeper could pop up. And so I think it's almost like a constant state of trying to figure things out, trying to understand. Probably that's it. Probably to continue to learn of what's happening so that you are constantly able to adjust and never consider that there is a final route.
I like that. I would say it. I think it's a very similar sentiment, but I'm going to say it a different way. Maybe it'll resonate differently with some people. And that is, if and when we're overwhelmed or we're lacking confidence, there's probably a root cause that we need to really try to explore. It's easier to let it go and blame external forces. It's the economy, it's this, it's that. My employees don't care anymore. I hear that all the time. It's the economy. Customers don't understand my business anymore. Those are the kinds of sentiments I think that really are the stuck part. And the businesses that last a long time are the ones that can actually figure out what's going on there and how to adjust to it so that they're not blaming as much as they're trying to learn, as you say. And that's not easy to do when you're in it emotionally.
Of course.
I'm the first to say that my emotions can really get in the way of me discovering what I probably could have discovered very easily, were it not for the fact that I really care. And I'm too close to it sometimes to see it. And someone outside can say to me, well, Bob, come on. There's an easy solution here. I think I told the story. I know I wrote it in my book about the person I was speaking and I was complaining. I would sell books when I spoke for $10 instead of $15, and people wouldn't, I'm like, yeah, I sell all these books, which is great, but I get no contact information, so I can't follow up with the people. And I had lunch with a friend, and Tim, my friend, said, why don't you just ask for a business card or have them write their name down and their phone number on a sheet of paper or their email on a sheet of paper if they want the discount? I was like, what? He's like, why don't you do? I had, honest to God, worried about that problem for weeks, months. I wrestled in my head with it over and over. And he said that. And I'm like, that is the simplest solution in the world. And I could not see it. And I just like, I remember saying to him, like, I feel like such a knucklehead. And he said, no, you're just in it. And I think we all have those situations.
Of course. That's like this board has that situation. They thought they could solve it internally. They've tried. They haven't been able to do it. So now
And
they're going to outside to someone to look at things different and offer a different perspective. And might not even be a different perspective. It's just a different voice sharing that perspective.
Ed's got one more comment. Biblically speaking, the Lord damned the fig tree. Bob, your metaphor is correct. Oh, I like that. And Tom's question was the root cause is the business owner. Ooh. So Ed says it all goes back to the business owner.
Well, it was interesting when you were talking about your business and you said, well, I'm a business owner of one. And I was like, okay, well, how many real root things could it be if there's only one of you there? Although it could be other things. It could be.
No, I agree with Ed. I absolutely agree with that, Ed. But at the same time, when I read that, I was cringing. I'm like, oh, shoot, it all comes back to me. I really would like it not to be me. Because often the hardest problem to resolve is ourselves. It would be so much easier to blame the economy, the mortgage rates, the national housing crisis, the gas prices, the cost of energy, technology today, millennials, Generation Z, the education system. I can go on and on and on, all the things I can blame, but I agree with that. At the end, the only person responsible for my business is me. Just like Ed's got a business, I know it's on him. And that's a very threatening thing to me at times because when I started my business, I didn't really realize how powerful that was and how much the owners of a business that I worked for took on. You know, being an employee can be really easy. Not being the leader of a nonprofit organization can be a whole lot easier than being the leader.
Sure.
And I don't think we train for that very well in our society. You just got to find it out and figure it out.
Well, we really understand what we understand. You know,
right.
Our employees don't understand it because they haven't ever been there. They don't know the challenge. They just think, oh yeah, it's a business. It's got money. It pays us. It's great. What do I need to worry about?
Ed says the different set of eyes is more important than self-accountability. And I would agree with that. And I think that's something that I had to learn the hard way of thinking that I could solve every problem myself and then realizing that there were people around me that wanted to help me and that could save me a whole lot of time and effort and give me solutions to things that half the time they were solutions to things I didn't even know were the problems. And I think that's what you and I try to do with our Renegade Success Network.
Sure.
And with our new program, Sculpt Your Business, from chaos and confusion to confidence and control. So if you're someone looking for help in that area, let's talk about it. Talk with Tom or me. It's a powerful way to move past whatever's standing in your way. And it will make, at the end, I know Tom and I have done a lot of this work with each other just in the course of our relationship. And we've also helped other people. And it's so, we have a call every Wednesday where we see some people that we've been working with. And it's just so invigorating to see how much lighter they are in how they go about things and how they tackle new challenges in different ways. So if you're stuck with with a challenge, if you can't figure out the root, Tom and I would love to talk about your tree and how we can get from cutting the branches to figuring out what the root causes are and moving past it.
Yes, indeed. All right, everyone. If you have one thing, please feel free to share it because likely it'll have value for someone else or us. Maybe it's something Bob and I haven't even considered, and it would be helpful to us as we try to figure out and better understand or differently understand what's going on within ourselves and our businesses and organizations. Because we know that it'll add value to other people. They may be ready to hear it. So thanks so much for being with us today. If you happen to be listening to the podcast and you realize that there's no place to comment and you'd like to share your one thing or just some thoughts, you can join us inside of that revised group, our Sculpt Your Business group. Join us there and you can share your thoughts and ideas with others who are trying to figure out how to go from the chaos and confusion they have and having more confidence and control over what they're trying to accomplish. So we look forward to seeing you inside that group, or we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m.-ish Eastern time, for our next episode of Today's Antidote.
Hey, whatever you do, embrace the renegade in you. And I see I've got one more comment I'm going to throw in. The renegade program works because Tom and Bob are opposites that attract. I think in some ways he's right.
I don't know. Maybe.
With the same core belief. We might approach it differently, but we have the same core belief. That is that I'm amazing. We both share that belief. No kidding. No, we probably share that belief. I share the belief that you're amazing too. So folks, go out and be the renegade that you're meant to be.
Excellent. All right, everyone, go out and enjoy your day. We'll see you soon.